Are you living outside the US but you want access to the stuff Americans take for granted? The best credit cards, business financing, buy now, pay later, US payment processing, and real access to the US credit system. And the problem is you are not a US person. In this video, I will walk you through the full process step by step from A to Z, exactly how non-residents with US businesses can build access to the US credit ecosystem. And just so you know upfront, if you want this as a clean, structured roadmap instead of piecing things together from random videos, we built a beginner solution that walks you through it step by step. It covers the exact requirements, the best starter cards, the best premium cards later, and the common mistakes to avoid. I'll mention it again later, but it's there if you want a clear path without paying for expensive consulting or coaching. Alright, let's get into it. Step 1, you need a real US mailing address. This is non-negotiable. Ideally, you use friends or family in the US. A real residential address is what banks and credit providers like to see. If you don't have that, there are paid options, but they are usually more expensive than typical business addresses because they need to be unique and verifiable. People do this in different ways. Some rent an address legitimately, some use networks, some find arrangements through local contacts. The key is you usually need proof of address that you can actually use when opening accounts. Step 2, you need a US phone number and a solid email. You need a real US number that can receive SMS texts, and that's how banks verify you, that's how accounts get secured, and if you don't have it, you'll hit walls constantly. So US phone number, working text, and a clean email address. Step 3, you need an ITIN. This is a bare bones foundation. An ITIN is basically the tax ID for foreign individuals, and think of it as the closest thing to a social security number, but for non-US persons. You apply with a W-7 and supporting ID documents. And I'll be honest, it's very annoying. The IRS can process them inconsistently, and often it takes 6 to 10 weeks, sometimes even longer. So apply early because everything else becomes much easier once your ITIN is active. Step 4, plan at least one trip to the US for the best results. So if you want to maximize personal credit access, the reality is it's much easier in person. You can do it in different cities, but Miami is often the smoothest for international clients. And once you have your 3 basics, so address, phone number, and ITIN, you go in and open personal accounts at major banks like Chase, Bank of America, and Citibank. Most of the time you will need to show up physically. Online options exist, yes, but they are inconsistent and come and go. And if you have millions sitting around, yes, sometimes there are exceptions, but for most people, plan on doing this in person. And then step number 5 is opening fintech accounts for your LLC and start building transaction history. And this part matters more than people think. Don't just open accounts and leave them empty, actually use them, run transactions, pay bills, receive payments, build a real pattern. Because later, banks and lenders don't just look at forms, they look at behavior. Then step number 6, start with ITIN-friendly beginner credit cards. Once the bank accounts are open and your ITIN is active in the system, give it a couple of weeks and then you start applying for the right starter cards. Examples include Chase Freedom Rise, Bank of America Travel Rewards, Discover, and secured cards like Capital One Secured or Discover Secured. So a lot of this is trial and error, especially in the early phase. And a quick pro tip, don't apply for 10 cards in one day. Instead, apply strategically, one at a time, and then build history. The goal is approvals, not bunch of hard inquiries with no results. And then a few quick credit basics, because this is the game you are playing. In the US, your credit score is mainly determined by payment history, credit utilization, length of credit history, how much credit you have access to, and how often you apply for new credit. And your score controls what you can access. So the mission is simple: use your cards, pay them on time, and keep utilization low. And then comes the optimization phase. Set this up properly. Once you have your first cards, set autopay, pay statements in full, and keep utilization under 30%. So for example, if you have a 10,000 USD limit, try to stay under 3,000 a month. Also, credit monitoring is harder with an ITIN, so some systems don't work smoothly. You may need to do parts of this manually. Annoying, yes, but it's still doable. And then a big shortcut, authorized user trade lines. And this one can be very powerful. So if you have a trusted friend or family member in the US with a long-standing credit card, like 10, 20 or 30 years of perfect payments, they can add you as an authorized user. And that history can begin reporting to your credit file even if you never touch the card. So it can boost your credit score because it increases age of credit history and payment record. Some people also pay for trade lines. That gets more advanced because timing matters and you have to coordinate it with upcoming applications. And then when you are ready, you can apply for premium cards. Once your score is roughly 680 plus and you have built 6 to 12 months of clean history, then you can go after the fun stuff. Get Amex Platinum, Chase Sapphire Reserve or Capital One Venture X, the cards with launch access, miles and better perks. One practical tip, don't exaggerate income on applications. Even if you are making a lot, extremely high numbers can trigger verification, and as a non-resident without US tax returns, that can complicate things very fast. Another path here is Amex Global Transfer, so if you already have Amex in your home country. In some cases, you can use that relationship to get a US Amex earlier in the process. Platforms like Nova Credit also cover some of these methods using home country credit history. But today we are focusing on building it inside the US system. Now the business layer. Formalize your US company the right way. At this point, you want to structure your business properly, usually an LLC. You need an EIN, operating agreement, formation documents, everything organized and ready. And then open business bank accounts. Ideally, you synchronize this with your personal banking setup so you can build the relationship inside one bank ecosystem. And next, register for business credit. Get a DUNS number, make sure your business details match everywhere, and start building business credit history. And then you can go for business credit cards. But remember, most business cards will still learn on your personal credit profile, especially early. So the personal layer comes first. And now let's talk about the boss level financing stuff. Once everything is established, personal credit, business accounts, business history, then you can start accessing bigger financing, meaning high limit 0% intro APR cards, lines of credit, and loans at far better terms. There are additional steps that can increase access even more, like getting a US state ID in certain cases, but that's not relevant for everyone, and it depends on your visa situation and documentation. So if you want this as a clean step-by-step system, let me say this clearly, because I know the market, there are a lot of overpriced consulting and coaching offers around this topic. That's why we built a beginner solution that explained the entire process in a structured way, step-by-step, including what you need first, how to get the US address and phone setup right, how to handle the ITIN process, which bank accounts to open, which starter cards to apply for, how to build credit the right way, and which premium cards to target later. It's designed to help you do this without paying for expensive consulting packages, and if you need help, the link is in the description. Alright, that's a full roadmap. If you got value from this, subscribe and share it with someone who's trying to build US credit as a non-resident. And if you think I missed any steps that should be added to the system, drop a comment. I'm always improving this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.